The kitchen air clung to my skin like grease, thick, suffocating, saturated with the smell of roasted garlic and simmering marinara that had seeped into every thread of my uniform. My fingers ached from scrubbing plates for the past 6 hours, knuckles raw and reddened from the scalding water that never seemed hot enough to satisfy Chef Marco's standards. December 23rd, and Russo's was packed with families celebrating early, their laughter drifting back through the swinging doors like a reminder of everything I didn't have waiting for me at home. I wiped my forehead with the back of my hand, leaving a smear of soap suds across my temple. The other kitchen staff had already started their smoke break out back, their voices carrying through the cracked window above the industrial sink. I should have joined them. Should have taken those precious 7 minutes to breathe air that didn't taste like someone else's dinner. But rent was due in a week, and Mr. Russo had hinted at holiday bonuses for those who went above and beyond. Above and beyond apparently meant destroying your hands until they resembled something pulled from a horror film. "Emily, front of house needs you. Table 9 wants their check." I flinched at Marco's bark, nearly dropping the sauté pan I'd been scrubbing for the 3rd time. He didn't wait for my response, just disappeared back into his domain of fire and fury, leaving me standing there with dishwater dripping from my elbows. Front of house. My stomach twisted. I wasn't a server. I was kitchen staff. Invisible. Forgettable. The girl who made sure the pretty plates came back clean so the pretty servers could carry them out again. But we were understaffed, and apparently my ability to carry dishes without dropping them qualified me as backup. I dried my hands on my stained apron, pulled it off, and tried to smooth down my hair. Pointless. I caught my reflection in the chrome refrigerator door, exhausted blue eyes, blonde hair escaping from its ponytail in damp tendrils, the faint purple shadows beneath my lashes that no amount of concealer could hide anymore. 24 years old, and I looked like I'd been awake for 48 hours straight. Because I had been. Between my shift at Russo's and the overnight cleaning job at the office building downtown, sleep had become something I scheduled in 3-hour increments. My body had forgotten what it felt like to wake up rested. My mind had forgotten what it felt like to not calculate every dollar, every expense, every desperate attempt to keep my head above water in a city that wanted nothing more than to drown people like me. I pushed through the swinging doors into the dining room, and the atmosphere shifted entirely. Warm amber lighting replaced the harsh fluorescence of the kitchen. Soft jazz played from hidden speakers, mingling with the gentle clink of expensive silverware against fine china. The scent changed too. No more grease and desperation, but instead the refined aroma of wine, fresh bread, and the kind of cologne that cost more than my monthly rent. Women in elegant dresses laughed softly at their tables. Men in tailored suits gestured with crystal glasses catching the candlelight. I didn't belong here. The feeling settled into my bones like it always did when I crossed that threshold, the invisible barrier between their world and mine. I was the ghost they didn't see, the help that existed only to facilitate their comfort before vanishing back into the walls. Table 9 was in the corner, partially obscured by a decorative column wrapped in twinkling lights. I approached with the check in hand, my smile automatic and practiced. Pleasant, but not too friendly. Helpful, but not intrusive. "Your check, sir." The words died in my throat. 4 men occupied the table, but only one mattered. Only one commanded the space like gravity had rearranged itself around him. He sat at the head of the table, his back to the wall, a position that offered a view of every entrance, every exit, every person who entered the dining room. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and aristocratic features that somehow managed to be beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. He couldn't have been more than 30, but he carried himself with the authority of someone who'd been giving orders since birth. His suit was black, perfectly tailored, the kind of craftsmanship that whispered rather than shouted wealth. A thin gold chain disappeared beneath his collar. His hands rested on the table, long fingers, immaculate nails, a silver signet ring on his right hand that caught the light when he moved. Those hands looked like they'd never washed a dish, never scrubbed a floor, never known a moment of the desperate labor that defined my existence, but it was his eyes that stopped my breath. Dark, almost black in the dim lighting, they swept up to meet mine with an intensity that felt physical. For one suspended moment, the entire restaurant seemed to fall away. The laughter, the music, the gentle ambiance, all of it muted to nothing but the sound of my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. He looked at me like he could see through skin and bone straight into the marrow of who I was. Leave it. His voice was quiet, cultured, with the faintest trace of an accent I couldn't place. Not a request, a command wrapped in silk. I set the check on the table with trembling fingers, acutely aware of how close his hand was to mine. The other 3 men at the table hadn't even glanced my way. They were focused on their phones, their wine, their quiet conversation in Italian that I couldn't follow. But he watched me like I was the only person in the room. "Thank you," I whispered, already backing away. "Wait." I froze. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my feet had rooted themselves to the expensive carpet. He reached inside his jacket, a movement so casual, so practiced, that I almost didn't notice the way one of his companions immediately straightened, hand moving beneath the table. Protection. Security. These weren't businessmen having a holiday dinner. These were predators in expensive suits, and I'd just wandered into their territory. He pulled out a leather wallet, extracted several bills without counting them, and held them out to me. "For your service." I took them on autopilot, my fingers brushing against his for half a second. His skin was warm, surprisingly warm, and the brief contact sent electricity racing up my arm. That's too much. I stared at the bills in my hand, $300. More than I made in 2 shifts. "I just brought you the check, I didn't even—" "Keep it." Those dark eyes held mine, and something in their depths made my stomach flutter with equal parts fear, and something I didn't want to name. "Buy yourself something. You look like you need it." The words should have been insulting. They should have stung like a slap. But the way he said them, quiet, almost concerned, robbed them of their edge. He'd looked at me for 30 seconds and seen what I tried so hard to hide. The exhaustion, the desperation, the slow unraveling of a girl trying to hold herself together with sheer willpower and caffeine. "Thank you," I managed, my voice barely audible. "Thank you, sir." Something flickered across his face. Amusement? Satisfaction? Before I could decipher it, one of his companions leaned in and whispered something urgent. The man's expression shifted, hardening into something cold and businesslike. He nodded once, stood with fluid grace, and buttoned his jacket. He was tall, easily 6'2", with the kind of presence that made everyone within a 10-foot radius instinctively defer. His companions rose with him, falling into formation like practiced choreography. 1 ahead, 2 behind, creating a protective triangle with him at the center. They moved toward the exit, and I told myself to look away, to get back to the kitchen, to finish my shift, to forget the strange encounter entirely. But I couldn't. I watched him navigate through the dining room, observed how other patrons seemed to sense him coming, and moved aside without conscious thought, watched how the hostess at the front podium paled slightly when he approached, how she stammered through her pleasantries while he nodded politely and continued toward the door. Just before he left, he turned. His gaze found mine across the crowded restaurant with unnerving precision, as if he'd known exactly where I'd be standing. For 1 heartbeat, 2, 3, we stared at each other across the distance. Then the corner of his mouth lifted in the barest suggestion of a smile. Something private. Something meant only for me, and he was gone. The cold December air rushed in as the door opened and closed, carrying with it the smell of snow and expensive car leather. Through the front windows, I caught a glimpse of a black SUV pulling up to the curb, its windows tinted so dark they looked like holes cut into reality. He slid into the back seat with his companions, and the vehicle disappeared into the Chicago night, like smoke dissipating. "Emily! What the hell are you doing? Get back here!" Marco's voice shattered my trance. I shoved the bills into my pocket and hurried back toward the kitchen, my heart still racing, my skin still tingling where his fingers had brushed mine. I didn't know his name, didn't know who he was, what he did, why a man like that would give $300 to an exhausted kitchen girl who'd simply delivered his check. But I knew with absolute certainty that I'd never forget the way he looked at me, like I mattered, like I was visible, like I was something worth seeing. The rest of my shift blurred together in a haze of dishes and steam. My hands moved on autopilot, scrub, rinse, stack, repeat. while my mind replayed those few seconds over and over. His voice, his eyes, the way the air around him seemed charged with something dangerous and magnetic. By the time I clocked out at 11, my entire body screamed for rest. The temperature had dropped, and fresh snow drifted down from a sky heavy with clouds. I pulled my thin coat tighter, breath misting in the frigid air as I started the 8-block walk to the bus stop. Chicago in December was brutal. The wind cut through fabric and skin alike, finding every gap, every weakness, every place where my second-hand coat had worn thin. I kept my head down and walked fast, my sneakers crunching through slush that had already started to freeze. The streets were quieter now, most people tucked inside their warm homes or celebrating at holiday parties I'd never be invited to. A car passed, its headlights briefly illuminating the falling snow before disappearing around a corner. I was alone with the cold and my thoughts, neither of which provided much comfort. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out with numb fingers, squinting at the screen. Mom. Call me. It's important. My stomach dropped. Nothing good ever followed those words. I considered ignoring it, pretending my phone had died, but guilt won out. It always did. I pressed call and held the phone to my ear, trying to shield it from the wind. Emily. Finally. My mother's voice was tight with that particular blend of worry and accusation she'd perfected over the years. I've been trying to reach you all day. I was working, Mom. You know I can't. Your Aunt Linda called. She wanted to know if you're bringing someone to Christmas dinner. I closed my eyes, still walking, navigating the sidewalk by muscle memory. Mom, I told you I'm not coming. I have to work on Christmas Day. You can't miss another year, Emily. It's family. And everyone keeps asking about you, wondering why you're never around, whether you're seeing anyone. I'm not seeing anyone. The words came out sharper than intended, edged with exhaustion and frustration, and I can't afford to take the day off. The holiday pay is the only reason I'll make rent this month. Silence. The kind that felt heavy with disappointment. You're 24 years old, she said finally. When I was your age, I was already married with me. I know. I'd heard this speech 1,000 times. I'm doing the best I can, Mom. I'm sorry it's not good enough. That's not what I meant. I just worry about you. Alone in that city, working yourself to death with nothing to show for it. Your cousin Jennifer just got engaged. Did you hear? Beautiful ring. Beautiful man. Beautiful life. And she's 2 years younger than you. Each word landed like a stone in my chest. I knew she didn't mean to hurt me. She never did. But the comparisons, the constant reminders of everything I wasn't accomplishing, everything I didn't have, they accumulated like debts I'd never be able to repay. I'm happy for Jennifer, I lied. Look, I'm almost at the bus stop and my phone's dying. I'll call you on Christmas, okay? Emily, love you, Mom. Bye. I ended the call before she could protest, shoving the phone back into my pocket with more force than necessary. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I blinked them away furiously. Crying wouldn't change anything, wouldn't make rent appear, wouldn't make my family understand, wouldn't fill the hollow ache that had taken up permanent residence in my chest. The bus stop came into view, its shelter offering minimal protection from the wind. I was alone, thank God. I couldn't handle polite small talk with strangers right now, couldn't paste on the pleasant mask I wore at work, and pretend everything was fine. I sank onto the cold bench and pulled out the bills from my pocket, smoothing them across my knee. $300. It felt surreal, holding this much cash. I could pay my electric bill that had been threatening disconnect, could buy actual groceries instead of instant ramen and day-old bread from the discount rack, could maybe, possibly, allow myself one small luxury. My phone buzzed again. I almost ignored it, but the screen showed an unknown number, probably spam. I should let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Hello? Static crackled on the line, followed by breathing. Heavy, deliberate breathing that raised every hair on the back of my neck. Hello? I repeated, my voice smaller now. Emily. The voice was distorted, mechanical, like something from a horror film. Pretty Emily? Walking home all alone in the dark? Does your mother know how unsafe this city is for girls like you? Ice flooded my veins. I stood abruptly, spinning around, scanning the empty street with mounting panic. Who is this? How do you know? I know everything about you. Where you work. Where you live. How you take the bus home every night at this exact time. How very, very alone you are. The line went dead. My hands shook so violently I nearly dropped the phone. I backed against the bus shelter, my breath coming in short gasps, eyes darting to every shadow, every dark doorway, every potential hiding place. The street was empty, silent except for the wind and the distant sound of traffic, but I felt watched, hunted. This had to be a prank, some sick joke. It couldn't be real, but they'd known my name. They'd known about my mother. They'd known. Headlights appeared at the end of the block, approaching fast. Too fast. A dark sedan with tinted windows that slowed as it neared the bus stop. My heart hammered against my ribs. Every instinct screamed to run, but my legs had locked, frozen with terror. The car pulled up to the curb, the passenger window rolled down, and there he was. The man from the restaurant, those same dark eyes, that same perfect face, now creased with something that looked almost like concern. He leaned across the console, his expensive suit jacket open, revealing a white shirt that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Get in. Not a question. A command, delivered in that same quiet voice that bypassed rational thought and struck something primal. I couldn't form words, couldn't think through the panic still flooding my system. Someone just called you, threatened you. His eyes held mine, and I realized with dawning horror that he was right. Somehow he knew. This neighborhood isn't safe at this hour. Get in the car, Emily. My name on his lips sent a different kind of shiver through me. How do you know my... Now? The single word cracked like a whip, sharp with authority and something else. Urgency. Unless you'd prefer to wait and see if they call back, or show up in person. As if summoned by his words, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. The same unknown number. My hand moved before my brain caught up, reaching for the door handle. The interior was warm, leather seats soft beneath me as I slid inside. The door closed with an expensive click. And suddenly I was enclosed in a space that smelled like cedar, and something darker, something masculine and intoxicating. He pulled away from the curb smoothly, merging into the sparse traffic with practiced ease. I sat frozen, clutching my phone, very aware that I'd just gotten into a car with a complete stranger. A stranger who somehow knew my name, knew I'd been threatened, knew exactly where to find me. "Put on your seatbelt," he said, his voice softer now. I obeyed mechanically, my fingers fumbling with the buckle. "Good girl." Those two words, spoken so casually, so naturally, sent heat rushing through me despite the fear. I pressed myself against the passenger door, trying to create distance in the enclosed space. "Who are you?" I whispered. He glanced at me, and in the passing streetlights, his face was all sharp shadows and dangerous beauty, someone who doesn't like watching women get hurt. "That's not an answer." The corner of his mouth lifted. "No, it's not." We drove in silence for several minutes, and I realized with mounting unease that we weren't heading toward my neighborhood. We were moving deeper into downtown, toward the part of Chicago where buildings scraped the sky, and average people like me didn't belong. "Where are you taking me?" Panic crept back into my voice. "Somewhere safe." He made a turn, his movements fluid and confident. "Those people who called you, they're not amateurs, Emily. They don't make idle threats, and you..." His eyes swept over me, assessing. "You're not equipped to handle them." "What people?" "I don't understand any of this. I know." Something in his tone gentled. "And I'm sorry you're involved, but you are now, and the safest place for you is with me." "With you? I don't even know your name." "Dante." He said it simply, like the revelation meant nothing, like he hadn't just fundamentally shifted the dynamic between us. Dante Moretti. The name meant nothing to me, but the way he said it, like it carried weight, like it should mean something, made my stomach clench. "I want to go home," I said, hating how small my voice sounded. "No, you don't." He pulled up to a stoplight, turned those devastating eyes fully on me. "You want to feel safe. You want to stop looking over your shoulder. You want someone to protect you from the things that go bump in the night." He reached out, and I froze as his fingers brushed my cheek, feather-light, almost tender. "Let me be that someone, Emily, just for tonight." The light turned green, but he didn't look away, didn't move, just held me captive with his gaze and the promise implicit in his words. Behind us, a car honked. He smiled, a real smile this time, full of dark amusement, and accelerated forward. "Besides," he added, his tone shifting back to something lighter, more casual, "you still have my $300. Consider this premium customer service. Despite everything, the fear, the confusion, the absolute insanity of this situation." A startled laugh escaped me. He glanced over, and something warm flickered in those dark eyes. "There she is," he murmured. "I was wondering if you knew how to smile." No. The car glided through the streets, carrying me further from everything familiar, deeper into a world I didn't understand. And the most terrifying part wasn't that I'd gotten into a stranger's car. It was that I didn't want him to stop driving. The building Dante pulled up to didn't look like a building. It looked like a fortress dressed in glass and steel. 40 stories of dark windows reflecting the city lights, an entrance flanked by doormen in uniforms that probably cost more than my car would if I owned one. This was the kind of place where celebrities hid from paparazzi, where billionaires kept their mistresses, where people like me only entered through service entrances. Dante handed his keys to a valet who appeared from nowhere, moving with the kind of deference that spoke of familiarity and fear in equal measure. The young man didn't meet Dante's eyes, just murmured, "Welcome back, Mr. Moretti," and disappeared into the car like a ghost. "Come." Dante's hand settled on the small of my back, warm through the thin fabric of my coat. The touch was possessive, guiding, impossible to ignore. He steered me toward the entrance where the doorman opened the heavy glass door without being asked. "Evening, sir," the doorman said, his gaze sliding over me with barely concealed curiosity before snapping back to neutral professionalism. The lobby was all marble and ambient lighting, with abstract art on the walls that probably cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime. A Christmas tree towered in the center, decorated with silver and gold ornaments that caught the light like captured stars. Everything smelled expensive: polished wood, fresh flowers, and that particular scent of wealth that had no name, but was instantly recognizable. My sneakers squeaked against the marble floor, the sound obscenely loud in the hushed elegance. I was acutely aware of my stained jeans, my threadbare coat, the smell of kitchen grease that clung to my hair no matter how much I scrubbed. I didn't belong here. Everyone who looked at me knew it, but Dante's hand never left my back, and the pressure of his palm communicated something clear. "You're with me, and that's all that matters." We reached the elevator bank, and he pressed the button for the penthouse. Of course it was the penthouse. Where else would someone like him live? The doors slid shut, enclosing us in mirrored walls and soft lighting. I caught my reflection, pale, disheveled, eyes too wide with lingering fear and confusion. Next to me, Dante looked like he'd stepped from the pages of a magazine. Perfectly composed, devastatingly handsome, utterly in control. "You're afraid of me?" It wasn't a question. I met his eyes in the reflection. Should I be? Probably. He turned to face me directly, and suddenly the elevator felt much smaller. "But I promise you're safer with me than you were standing alone at that bus stop." That's not exactly reassuring. His lips curved. "I'm not trying to reassure you, Emily. I'm telling you the truth. There's a difference." The elevator climbed smoothly, the floors ticking by in illuminated numbers. 20, 30, 35. "Those people who called me," I said, forcing the words out past the tightness in my throat. "Who are they? What do they want?" "That's complicated. Try me." He studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "You served a table tonight. 4 men. You remember? Your table." "Yes. Did you notice anything unusual? Hear anything we said?" I shook my head, confused. "No." "You were speaking Italian, I think." "I don't understand Italian. I just brought the check and left." "Exactly." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "But someone thinks you heard something, saw something. They think you're a liability." The elevator dinged, arriving at the penthouse. The doors opened onto a private foyer with only one entrance, a massive door of dark wood that Dante unlocked with a key and a fingerprint scanner. A liability, I repeated numbly, following him inside. For bringing you a check, for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. He closed the door behind us, engaged multiple locks with practiced efficiency. For being visible when you should have been invisible. The penthouse was exactly what I'd expected, and somehow more. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Chicago's skyline. The city spread out below like a carpet of lights. The interior was masculine and minimalist. Dark leather furniture, exposed brick, art that managed to be both modern and timeless. A kitchen with appliances that looked like they belonged in a spaceship occupied one corner. Everything was pristine, organized, controlled, like him. I don't understand. I stood in the middle of the living room, my arms wrapped around myself. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm nobody. Why would anyone care about... Because I care. The words came out quiet, almost too quiet, but they hit me like a physical blow. Dante shrugged off his jacket, draped it over a chair, and suddenly he looked less polished, more dangerous. The shoulder holster he wore became visible. Black leather against white shirt, and the shape of a gun nestled beneath his arm. I made you visible by giving you that money, by looking at you the way I did, and now certain people have questions. My mouth went dry. I'm a businessman. He moved to a cabinet, poured amber liquid into 2 glasses. Among other things, what kind of business requires a gun? He smiled, but there was no humor in it. The kind that keeps beautiful women safe when they're too stubborn to protect themselves. He crossed to me, held out one of the glasses. Drink. You look like you need it. I took the glass with trembling hands, swallowed a mouthful without thinking. The liquor burned down my throat, stealing my breath and bringing tears to my eyes. I coughed, gasping. Easy. Dante's hand came up to steady me, his palm warm against my shoulder. It's whiskey, not water. I don't usually drink. The words came out strangled, I know. His thumb brushed along my collarbone, a touch so light I might have imagined it. You work 2 jobs, live in a neighborhood that's 1 step above condemned buildings, and you haven't bought yourself anything that wasn't absolutely necessary in months. Am I right? The accuracy of his assessment stole my breath more effectively than the whiskey. How do you... I make it my business to know things. He took the glass from my hand, set both drinks on the coffee table, and then he was standing so close I could feel the heat radiating from his body, especially when those things involve someone I'm interested in. You don't know me. My voice came out whispered, weak. You saw me for 5 minutes. I saw enough. His hand came up to my face, fingers tracing my jawline with devastating gentleness. I saw a girl working herself to death because she's too proud to quit and too stubborn to ask for help. I saw exhaustion and strength in equal measure. I saw someone who deserves better than cold bus stops and threatening phone calls. And what? You decided to rescue me? The words should have sounded defiant, but instead they came out breathless. Like some damsel in distress? No, Emily. He leaned closer, his breath ghosting across my lips. I decided to claim you. There's a difference. Before I could process those words, before I could question or protest or demand explanations, his phone buzzed. The moment shattered. Dante stepped back, pulling the device from his pocket with a muttered curse in Italian. He listened to whoever was on the other end, his expression hardening into something cold and lethal. When? A pause. How many? Another pause. Longer this time. His eyes cut to me, and something in that gaze made my stomach clench. No. She stays here. I don't care what protocol says. She's under my protection now. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. He ended the call, scrubbed a hand across his jaw. What's happening? I asked, even though part of me didn't want to know. The people who called you, they've escalated. They're looking for you. He moved to the window, stared out at the city below with the intensity of a predator surveying territory. They know you came here with me, which means they're watching, learning, trying to find leverage. Leverage for what? He turned back to face me, and in the dim lighting, he looked like something from a dark fairy tale. Beautiful and terrible, and utterly removed from anything resembling normal humanity. A war that started long before you walked into my life, he said simply. But you're in it now, whether you want to be or not. The question is whether you trust me to keep you safe, or whether you'd rather take your chances alone. I thought about the phone call, the mechanical voice promising knowledge of my life, my routine, my vulnerability. I thought about my empty apartment with its broken lock that I'd been meaning to fix for 3 months. I thought about walking home in the dark, always looking over my shoulder, always afraid. And I thought about the way Dante looked at me, like I was something precious and breakable and worth protecting. "I don't trust you," I said honestly. "I don't even know you." "Smart girl." He crossed back to me, and this time when he touched my face, his fingers tangled in my hair, tilting my head back to meet his eyes. "But you will. I'll make sure of it." The promise in those words should have terrified me. Instead, it sent heat pooling low in my belly and made my breath catch in ways that had nothing to do with fear. "You'll stay here tonight," he continued, his voice dropping to something almost hypnotic. "Tomorrow, we'll deal with the threat. But tonight, you're mine to protect. Understand?" I should have argued. Should have demanded he take me home. Should have called the police. Should have done 1,000 things that made logical sense. But logic had abandoned me the moment I got in his car. "Okay," I whispered. His smile was slow, satisfied, and absolutely devastating. "Good girl," he murmured again, and this time the words felt like a brand against my skin. Dante showed me to a guest room that was larger than my entire apartment. A king-sized bed dominated the space, dressed in charcoal linens that probably had a thread count I couldn't even comprehend. The attached bathroom gleamed with marble and chrome, fluffy white towels stacked with hotel precision. Everything smelled clean and expensive, utterly foreign to someone who bought her toiletries from the dollar store. "There are clothes in the closet," Dante said from the doorway, his presence filling the frame. "They should fit. Shower, rest, whatever you need. I'll be down the hall if you need anything." "Whose clothes?" The question came out before I could stop it. Something flickered across his face, amusement, maybe, or satisfaction. "No one's. I had them brought up while we were in the elevator." "You had clothes brought up." I repeated the words slowly, trying to make them make sense. "In the 15 minutes since we arrived." "I told you, Emily. I make it my business to be prepared." He pushed off the doorframe, took a step into the room. "You're not the first person who's needed sanctuary here, though you're certainly the most interesting." The way he said interesting made my skin prickle with awareness. "I should call my mom," I said, desperate to fill the charged silence. "She'll worry if she doesn't hear from me." "No calls." The command was gentle, but absolute. "Your phone can be tracked. Until we know who's behind this and what they want, you're dark. No contact with anyone from your old life." My old life, as if the past 6 hours had fundamentally severed me from everything I'd known. And maybe they had. For how long? "As long as it takes." He moved closer, reached out to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear. The gesture was tender, intimate, completely at odds with the dangerous reality of what was happening. "I know this is frightening. I know you don't understand, but I need you to trust that I'm doing what's necessary to keep you alive." "And if I don't want to be kept?" The defiance in my voice surprised even me. His eyes darkened, and suddenly the tenderness evaporated, replaced by something primal and possessive. His hand slid from my hair to the nape of my neck, fingers curling just enough to hold me in place without hurting. "Then you'll learn," he said softly, dangerously. "I don't let go of what's mine, Emily. And whether you've accepted it yet or not, you became mine the moment I looked at you across that restaurant." My heart hammered against my ribs. I should have been terrified, should have fought, screamed, done something other than stand there feeling heat pool in my belly at his words. "I'm not a possession," I whispered. "No." His thumb stroked along my pulse point, and I knew he could feel how fast my heart was racing. "You're far more valuable than that. You're a responsibility, a promise. Something I will protect with everything I have, even if it means protecting you from yourself." He released me then, stepped back, and the loss of his touch felt like cold water. "Get some rest," he said. his voice returning to that carefully controlled neutrality. "Tomorrow will be difficult." He left before I could respond, the door clicking shut with finality. I stood frozen for several minutes, trying to process everything that had happened. This morning, I'd woken up in my cramped studio, worried about bills and bus schedules, and whether Mr. Russo would give me extra shifts during the holidays. Now I was standing in a penthouse that cost more per month than I earned in a year, under the protection of a man who carried a gun and spoke about ownership like it was romantic. My phone sat heavy in my pocket. I pulled it out, stared at the dark screen. No calls from Mom, thank God. But 3 missed calls from the unknown number, each one a reminder that someone out there wanted to hurt me. I should have been making a plan, should have been figuring out how to escape, how to get to the police, how to reclaim my normal life. Instead, I walked to the closet. The clothes Dante had mentioned hung in neat rows. Jeans in my exact size, soft sweaters, a silk pajama set that felt like water against my fingers. Everything still had tags attached, pristine and untouched. He'd known my sizes, had known what I'd need before I'd even gotten in his car. The realization should have frightened me. It didn't. I grabbed the pajamas and headed for the bathroom, peeling off my work clothes with relief. The mirror showed me what I'd been too afraid to examine earlier. Shadows under my eyes like bruises, my collarbone too prominent, my hair dull from cheap shampoo and stress. I looked like what I was, a girl on the edge of breaking. The shower was a revelation. Water pressure that actually worked. Temperature that stayed consistent. Soap that smelled like vanilla and honey instead of chemical fake flowers. I stood under the spray until my skin turned pink, washing away the grease and exhaustion and fear, watching it all spiral down the drain. When I finally emerged, wrapped in a towel that was somehow warm, heated towel rack, my brain supplied uselessly, I felt almost human again. The pajamas fit perfectly, silk pants and a matching camisole in deep emerald green that made my eyes look less tired. I stared at my reflection and barely recognized myself. I looked like I belonged here, in this world of luxury and danger. I looked like I could be his. The thought sent a shiver through me that had nothing to do with cold. I should have climbed into that massive bed and tried to sleep. Instead, I found myself opening the door, padding barefoot down the hallway toward the light spilling from what had to be the living room. Dante sat on the leather couch, his shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle. A laptop rested on the coffee table in front of him, the screen displaying what looked like security camera feeds. He had a glass of whiskey in one hand, and he was completely focused on whatever he was watching. Until I entered the room. His head turned immediately, those dark eyes sweeping over me in a way that felt physical. Something heated flashed across his face before he locked it down. "Can't sleep." His voice was rough, like I'd interrupted something. "I don't understand what's happening." I moved closer, drawn despite every logical reason to keep my distance. "You said people are after me because I was visible, because you gave me money and looked at me. But that doesn't make sense. Why would anyone care?" He set down his glass, gestured to the space beside him on the couch. "Sit, I'll explain what I can." I hesitated, then sank onto the leather, careful to maintain distance between us. The city glittered beyond the windows, millions of lights representing millions of lives. Normal lives. Safe lives. "The men at that table tonight," Dante began, his gaze fixed on the skyline. "They were associates, business partners. We were discussing a transaction, one that certain other parties would very much like to disrupt." "What kind of transaction?" "The kind that moves a lot of money and shifts a lot of power." He turned to look at me directly. "I'm not going to lie to you, Emily. The business I'm in isn't legal. It's not safe. It's not the kind of thing nice girls from the suburbs should ever be exposed to." My mouth went dry. "You're a criminal." "I'm a businessman who operates outside the law," he corrected. "There's a difference. I have codes, rules, lines I don't cross. But yes, by most definitions, what I do would be considered criminal. And those people who called me, they're criminals too. They're rivals. Competitors who see an opportunity to gather intelligence or cause problems." His hand moved to my knee, a touch that was both reassuring and claiming. "They think you overheard something, saw something. They want to know what, and they'll hurt you to find out." But I didn't hear anything," I protested, hating the edge of panic in my voice. I know. His thumb traced circles on my knee through the silk. Which is why you're here, why you're safe, why I'm going to make absolutely certain nothing happens to you. Why? The question burst out of me. Why do you care? You don't know me. I'm nobody. In one fluid movement, he shifted closer, his free hand coming up to cup my face. You're not nobody. His voice was low, intense, burning with conviction. You're the girl who looked at me like I was human instead of a monster. You're the girl who's been fighting so hard for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to be protected. You're the girl who walked into my world by accident and somehow became the most important thing in it. That's insane, I whispered, even as my body leaned into his touch. Probably. His smile was crooked, almost self-deprecating, but I've never claimed to be sane. I see something I want. I take it. I find something worth keeping. I keep it. And you, Emily, you're worth keeping. His thumb brushed across my lower lip, and I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but feel the electricity crackling between us. What if I don't want to be kept? But the words came out breathy, unconvincing even to my own ears. Then I'll spend every day proving to you why you should. He leaned in, his lips hovering just above mine, so close I could taste the whiskey on his breath. I'll keep you safe. I'll give you everything you've been too afraid to want. I'll make you forget what it felt like to be invisible. Dante, say it again. His hand tightened on my face, possessive and demanding. Say my name like that. Dante, I repeated, and the word felt like surrender. He kissed me. Not gentle, not tentative. He kissed me like he was claiming territory, like my mouth belonged to him, and he was simply taking what was already his. His hand slid into my hair, angling my head exactly where he wanted it, and I couldn't do anything but surrender to the possession of it. I'd been kissed before. Fumbling college boys who tasted like cheap beer, a coworker who'd tried and failed to spark anything beyond awkward politeness. Those kisses had been forgettable, easily dismissed. This was annihilation. Dante kissed like he did everything else, with absolute control and devastating precision. His tongue swept into my mouth, demanding response, and I gave it without thinking. My hands found his chest, felt the hard muscle beneath expensive cotton, felt his heart beating as fast as mine. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. His eyes had gone almost black, pupils blown wide with want. You taste like fear and desire, he murmured, his thumb tracing my swollen lower lip. I want to consume both. This is crazy. But I didn't pull away. Couldn't pull away. Everything about this is insane. Welcome to my world. He released me, but only to pull me against his side, tucking me into the curve of his body like I'd been designed to fit there. You should sleep. Tomorrow starts early. What happens tomorrow? Tomorrow, I introduce you to my family. I twisted to look at him. Your family? The people I work with. The people who need to understand that you're under my protection. His arm tightened around me, possessive and unyielding. That you're mine, and anyone who touches you answers to me. The casual violence implicit in those words should have terrified me. Instead, it made me feel safer than I had in years. I should go back to the guest room, I said without conviction. You should, but you won't. He pressed a kiss to my temple, surprisingly tender. Stay. Sleep here. Let me keep the nightmares away. I wanted to argue, wanted to maintain some semblance of independence, some proof that I wasn't completely falling under his spell, but exhaustion was pulling at me like a riptide, and his body was warm and solid against mine, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt protected. Just for tonight, I whispered, already feeling my eyes growing heavy. Just for tonight, he agreed, but something in his tone told me he was lying. I fell asleep wrapped in a criminal's arms, his heartbeat steady beneath my ear, and I didn't dream. Morning came with pale winter sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I woke disoriented, warm, tucked beneath a blanket I didn't remember being covered with. The penthouse was silent, except for the distant sounds of the city waking up below. Dante was gone. I sat up, pushing hair out of my face, trying to orient myself. The events of last night felt surreal in the cold light of day. The threatening phone calls, the drive through Chicago, the kiss that had rearranged something fundamental inside me. A note sat on the coffee table, written in bold, decisive handwriting. Breakfast in the kitchen. Eat. Someone will bring clothes. We leave at noon. D commands, not requests. I should have bristled at the presumption. Instead, I found myself smiling. The kitchen revealed itself to be fully stocked, the refrigerator containing more food than I'd seen in one place outside of a grocery store. Fresh fruit, imported cheeses, eggs that probably came from some boutique farm. I settled for toast and coffee, eating mechanically while staring out at the city. My city. Except it didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like I'd crossed some invisible threshold, stepped through a doorway into a parallel version of Chicago where the rules were different and danger wore expensive suits. A knock at the door made me jump, coffee sloshing over the rim of my mug. "Miss Emily?" A woman's voice, professional and polite. "Mr. Moretti sent me with clothing." I opened the door to find a woman in her 40s holding several shopping bags from stores I'd only ever walked past. She smiled efficiently. "I'm Maria. I'll be helping you get ready." She swept past me into the penthouse like she owned it, laying out bags on the dining table. Mr. Moretti was very specific about what he wanted. "You're a lucky girl. He's never taken an interest like this before." "An interest," I repeated, watching her pull out a dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "He's protective of you. That means something." Maria held up the dress, midnight blue, simple but elegant, the kind of thing that would make me look like I belonged in Dante's world. "Now, let's get you ready. The family doesn't like to be kept waiting." The next hour passed in a blur of Maria's expert hands styling my hair into soft waves, applying makeup that somehow made me look like a better version of myself, zipping me into the dress that fit like it had been made for my body. She added delicate gold jewelry, earrings, a thin bracelet, and heels that were mercifully low enough to walk in. When she finally turned me toward the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The exhausted kitchen girl had vanished. In her place stood someone polished, composed, almost elegant. Someone who could stand next to Dante and not look completely out of place. "Perfect," Maria declared. "He'll be very pleased." As if summoned, Dante appeared in the doorway. He'd changed into a fresh suit, charcoal gray this time, with a black shirt that made him look even more dangerous than usual. His hair was still damp from a shower, slicked back to reveal the sharp angles of his face. He looked at me like I was art he'd commissioned and found satisfactory. "Beautiful," he said simply, moving into the room with that predatory grace. "Are you ready?" "For what, exactly?" "To meet the people who run the city." He offered his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, I took it. His fingers closed around mine, warm and possessive. "Stay close to me. Don't speak unless I tell you to, and remember, you're mine. Anyone who questions that will regret it." The elevator ride down was silent, Dante's thumb tracing absent patterns on the back of my hand. Two men in dark suits waited by a black SUV with tinted windows, the kind of vehicle that screamed money and danger in equal measure. One of them opened the back door, and Dante guided me inside with a hand on my lower back. The interior was leather and luxury, completely soundproofed from the world outside. Another man sat in the driver's seat, his eyes meeting Dante's in the rearview mirror. "Everything prepared?" Dante asked. "Yes, sir. Marco and Luca are already there." "Good." Dante settled back, pulling me against his side again. It was becoming natural, this casual possession, this assumption that my body belonged next to his. We drove through Chicago's streets, leaving downtown behind for neighborhoods I'd never ventured into. Areas where old money lived behind iron gates and security systems. Finally, we turned onto a tree-lined street and pulled up to a restaurant I recognized from magazines, Caruso's. The kind of place that required reservations months in advance and had a dress code enforced by men in suits. "This is a restaurant," I said stupidly. "This is family business." Dante helped me out of the SUV, his hand never leaving me. "The Carusos are our oldest allies. We meet here once a month to discuss territory, conflicts, opportunities." "You mean crimes?" His smile was sharp. I mean business, Emily. Try to remember that distinction. The restaurant was closed to the public, I realized as we entered through a side door. Inside, several men sat at a large table, their conversation stopping the moment we appeared. They were all older than Dante, ranging from their 40s to a man who had to be pushing 70. They wore expensive suits and hard eyes, and they looked at me like I was a puzzle they couldn't quite solve. "Gentlemen," Dante said, his voice carrying effortless authority, "thank you for agreeing to this meeting. You said it was urgent," the oldest man said, his accent thick with Italian. "This better not be a waste of our time, Moretti." "It's not." Dante's hand tightened on my waist. "There's been a threat against someone under my protection. I'm here to make it clear that any action taken against her will be considered an act of war against me personally." Silence. The men exchanged glances, communicating in that wordless way that spoke of years working together. "Who is she?" another man asked, his gaze raking over me with undisguised curiosity. "Mine," Dante said simply. "That's all you need to know. And the threat? Someone called her last night, mechanical voice, new details about her life. They're fishing, trying to find out what she knows about our meeting at Russo's." "Does she know anything?" "No. She's innocent, which is why she's now under my direct protection." Dante's voice dropped, gaining an edge that made my skin prickle. "I'm asking you, as allies, to spread the word. Emily Morgan is off limits. Anyone who touches her, threatens her, or even looks at her wrong will answer to me. Are we clear?" The oldest man studied us both for a long moment, his eyes shrewd and calculating. Then slowly he smiled. "You've claimed her publicly. That's a bold move, Dante. Dangerous, even. I know what I'm doing. Do you?" The old man leaned back in his chair. "Because taking a civilian under your protection makes her a target, makes her leverage. Every enemy you have will see her as a weakness they can exploit." "Let them try." The quiet menace in Dante's voice made several of the men shift uncomfortably. "I'll enjoy showing them why that's a mistake." Another long silence, tension thick enough to choke on. Finally, the old man nodded. "Very well. The families will be informed. Your girl is protected by our alliance. But Dante..." His eyes hardened. "If she becomes a liability, if she puts any of us at risk, that protection ends. Understood?" "Understood." Dante's arm pulled me closer, so tight I could barely breathe. "But she won't be a liability. I'll make sure of it." The meeting ended with tense handshakes and promises that felt more like threats. Dante guided me back to the SUV, his hand never leaving my body, as if by maintaining physical contact he could shield me from the weight of what had just happened. I'd been claimed. Publicly. Irrevocably. The drive back to the penthouse was silent, but the air between us crackled with unspoken words. I stared out the window, watching Chicago blur past, trying to process the fact that my life had fundamentally changed in less than 24 hours. "You're angry," Dante said finally. "I'm terrified." The honesty escaped before I could stop it. "You just painted a target on my back and called it protection. I gave you the only protection that matters in my world, my name." His hand found mine, laced our fingers together. "Yes, it makes you visible, but it also makes you untouchable. There's a difference. And if your enemies decide to test that, then they'll learn why people fear the Moretti name." His voice was cold, absolute. "I meant what I said, Emily. Anyone who touches you dies. That's not hyperbole. That's a promise." The casual way he spoke about death should have horrified me. Instead, it sent a dark thrill through my veins that I didn't want to examine too closely. Back at the penthouse, Dante poured himself a drink and stood by the windows, tension radiating from every line of his body. I kicked off the heels Maria had given me, relishing the feeling of my bare feet on cool hardwood. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we wait. The word spreads through the families, filters down to the street level. Within 48 hours, everyone who matters will know you're mine." He turned to face me, and something in his expression had shifted. Less controlled, more raw. "And then we deal with whoever made the mistake of threatening you. Deal with them how? Do you really want to know?" I thought about it. about the violence implicit in everything Dante did, the danger that clung to him like expensive cologne. I thought about the gun under his jacket and the cold promise in his eyes when he talked about protecting me. No, I admitted. I don't think I do. His smile was approving. Smart girl. Some things are better left in the dark. He set down his glass and crossed to me, each step deliberate, predatory. When he reached me, his hands came up to frame my face, tilting my head back to meet his gaze. I need you to understand something, he said quietly. This isn't temporary. This isn't some rescue mission where I save you, and then we go our separate ways. You're in my world now, Emily. You're under my protection, which means you're also under my control. And I don't let go. That's not fair, I whispered, even as my body leaned into his touch. No, it's not, but it's the truth. His thumb traced my lower lip, and heat pooled in my belly. I could try to be noble, could set you up somewhere safe, give you money, let you disappear into a normal life. But I'm not that good, Emily. I'm selfish and possessive, and when I want something, I take it. And I want you. Why? The question burst out of me, desperate and confused. Why me? I'm nobody special. I'm just a girl who works too hard and can barely pay rent. What could you possibly want with someone like me? Everything. The single word carried the weight of obsession. I want your vulnerability and your strength. I want the way you look at me like I'm dangerous and fascinating in equal measure. I want to be the one who keeps the shadows away, who gives you everything you've been too afraid to ask for. His forehead pressed against mine, his breath ghosting across my lips. I want to own you, Emily, body and soul, and I'm going to make you want that too. That's insane, I breathed. Probably. His lips brushed mine, featherlight, teasing, but you're already halfway there. I can feel it in the way you respond to me, the way you let me touch you, the way you haven't once tried to run. He was right, and we both knew it. Somewhere between the threatening phone call and this moment, I'd stopped fighting, stopped questioning. I'd let myself fall into his gravity, and now escape felt impossible. Not because he wouldn't let me go, but because I didn't want to. What if I can't be what you want? My voice came out small, vulnerable. What if I disappoint you? Impossible. His kiss was gentle this time, reverent almost. You already are what I want. Now I just need to convince you to want it too. The next 2 days passed in a strange, suspended reality. Dante worked from the penthouse, his laptop and phone constantly demanding attention, while I existed in a bubble of luxury I'd never imagined. Maria came daily with new clothes, treating me like a project she was determined to perfect. I read books from Dante's extensive library, cooked in his restaurant-quality kitchen, and slowly stopped flinching every time my phone buzzed. No more threatening calls came, no more mechanical voices promising violence. Dante had been right. His claim had worked. On the third morning, I woke to find him already dressed, sitting on the edge of the bed watching me with an intensity that made my breath catch. Good morning, I mumbled, pushing hair out of my face. We got him. His voice was satisfied, dark with something I didn't want to name. The man who called you. My people found him last night. I sat up slowly, pulling the sheets around myself. What did you do? What needed to be done? He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. He won't be making any more phone calls. Not to you, not to anyone. The finality in those words painted a clear picture. I should have been horrified, should have demanded details, should have felt guilt or disgust or fear. Instead, I felt safe. Thank you, I whispered. Something softened in his expression. You're welcome. He stood, offered his hand. Get dressed. I'm taking you somewhere. Where? You'll see. An hour later, we stood in front of a small but pristine apartment building in a neighborhood I actually recognized. Safe, clean, affordable by Chicago standards, but not desperately poor. Dante handed me a key. What is this? I asked, staring at the silver metal in my palm. Your apartment. 3 bedrooms, updated kitchen, security system that would make a bank jealous. He guided me inside, up to the 3rd floor, and opened the door to reveal a space that was simple, but beautiful. Hardwood floors, large windows letting in natural light, furniture that was comfortable without being ostentatious. It's yours, Paid for the next 2 years, utilities included. I walked through the rooms in a daze. A real kitchen with appliances that worked. A bathroom with a tub and actual water pressure. Bedrooms with space and light and the kind of peace I'd forgotten existed. "I don't understand," I said finally. "Why would you do this?" "Because you deserve better than that shoebox you were living in. Because I want you safe and comfortable." He leaned against the doorframe, watching me explore with satisfaction clear on his face. "Because you're mine to take care of now." "Dante, I can't accept this. It's too much." "You can and you will." He crossed to me, pulled me against his chest. "Here's how this works, Emily. You live here. You quit both your jobs. I've already called them. Given notice on your behalf. You focus on school or whatever you want to do with your life, without worrying about rent or food, or whether the heat will work in winter. And in exchange?" I looked up at him, searching his face. "What do I give you?" "You." Simple, direct, absolute. You give me you. You let me take care of you, protect you, keep you. You accept that you're mine and stop fighting it. That's not fair. No, it's not. But it's what I'm offering. His hand cupped my face, thumb stroking my cheekbone. "I'm not a good man, Emily. I've done things that would make you run screaming if you knew the details, but I'm good to what's mine. And you're mine now, whether you fully accepted it or not." I should have said no. Should have demanded my independence, my autonomy, my right to make my own choices. Should have been strong enough to walk away from the temptation of security and protection, and someone who looked at me like I was the center of his universe. But I was so tired of being strong, so tired of fighting alone, of working myself to death for scraps, of being invisible to everyone except bill collectors and disappointed family members. And Dante saw me, really saw me. Not as someone to pity or fix or use, but as something precious worth keeping. "Okay," I whispered. His smile was devastating, triumphant. "Say it properly." "I'm yours." The words felt like surrender and freedom in equal measure. "I accept." He kissed me then, deep and possessive and claiming, and I kissed him back with everything I had. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to mine. "Good girl," he murmured. "My good girl." Christmas came 3 days later. I spent it in my new apartment, cooking dinner with ingredients Dante had the penthouse chef deliver. Real food, quality cuts of meat, fresh vegetables that hadn't been sitting under fluorescent lights for a week. Dante arrived at 6, carrying wine that probably cost more than my old monthly rent, and we ate together at my new table like normal people, except we weren't normal people. He was a criminal who'd killed to protect me. I was the girl who'd accepted his protection, knowing exactly what it meant. After dinner, we sat on the couch, my body tucked against his side in what had become our natural position. Snow fell outside the windows, blanketing Chicago in white silence. "I called my mom today," I said quietly. "Told her I got a new job, a new place, that I'm doing better. And?" His fingers traced lazy patterns on my shoulder. "She wants to meet you." I tilted my head to look up at him. "The man who swept in and changed my life. She thinks you're my boyfriend. I'm much more than that." His smile was dangerous and beautiful. "But we can let her think what she wants." "What are you then? If not my boyfriend?" He considered the question, his dark eyes serious. "Your protector. Your keeper. The man who owns you in ways that have nothing to do with possession and everything to do with devotion." His hand found mine, laced our fingers together. "I told you I don't let go, Emily." "I meant it. You're mine for as long as you'll have me. And I intend to make sure that's a very, very long time." "That's intense," I whispered. "I'm an intense man." He pulled me into his lap, settled me against him so I could feel the solid strength of his body. "But you already knew that. You knew it the moment you got in my car. You knew it when you stayed that first night. You knew it when you said yes to this apartment. To me. To us." He was right. I had known. Some part of me had recognized him the moment our eyes met across that restaurant, had recognized the danger and the safety he represented in equal measure. "I should be afraid of you," I said. "But you're not." It wasn't a question. "No." I touched his face, traced the sharp line of his jaw. I'm afraid of how much I don't want to leave. Then don't. He kissed me slowly, thoroughly, until I was breathless and clinging to him. Stay. Be mine. Let me give you the life you deserve. And what kind of life is that? One where you're cherished, protected, where you never have to worry about rent or food or whether you're good enough. His hands framed my face, his gaze burning with intensity. Where you're the center of someone's world, Emily. Where you matter. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I blinked them away. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're strong and stubborn, and you've been fighting alone for too long. I know you deserve someone to fight for you instead. He kissed my forehead, gentle and reverent. Let me be that someone. Let me keep you. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the city in silence and peace. Inside, wrapped in the arms of a dangerous man who'd claimed me as his own, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Okay, I whispered against his lips. Keep me. His smile was beautiful and terrible and absolutely devastating. Always, he promised. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I believed in promises. I believed in second chances. I believed that maybe, just maybe, getting into that stranger's car on a cold December night had been the best decision I'd ever made. Because I'd needed a boyfriend for Christmas. And instead, I'd found something far more dangerous and infinitely more precious. I'd found someone who made me feel like I was worth keeping, and in the end, that was all I'd ever really wanted.